Upon our first reading of King Bidgood's In the Bathtub by Audrey Wood and illustrated by Don Wood, we thought that it would be a playful story of the king and his kingdom. Through a closer read, we found a deeper meaning behind the king's time in the bathtub. King Bidgood's In the Bathtub's paratextual features add to the overall meaning of the book. The dust jacket of the book utilizes an image from within the book to present readers with a glimpse of what is to come. The color values of the cover artwork represent the Renaissance era and the wealth and status of those surrounding the king. A golden crown and puddle of water are stamped on the deep purple front cover in gold. This stamped image represents the status of the king and where his royal duties stand during his duration in the bathtub. As you open the book, you are met with purple end pages representing royalty. The jacket flap offers readers an insight into the content of the story and adds greater meaning to what each element of King Bidgood's In the Bathtub represents. As the reader turns the page to the title page, they are met with a picturesque scene of a Renaissance-era kingdom. This offers readers an understanding of the hierarchical society that King Bidgood rules in, even before the readers enter the storyline. With a final page turn within the paratextual features, readers are met with an image that portrays the true woes of society in the Bidgood kingdom. The page, dressed in common man clothes, struggles to ascend the steps of the king's castle with a large jug of water, meant for the king and his frivolous hierarchical ways of treating his citizens.
In this image, the background is framed by the bath curtain. The bathtub itself is in the foreground, with King Bidgood and the Duke inside. The image is full bleed, placing the reader directly in the story. The illustrations are extremely lifelike, as they are actually drawn from real human models. This adds to the feeling of being in the story as you read it. Your eyes are first drawn to the Duke, who is hooking a worm. He seems to be frustrated with both the worm and the king, yet he has indulged the king in his ridiculous assertion that they fish in the tub. He is dressed in a pink and green outfit, which has a lot of frills and poofy additions. This story takes place in the Renaissance era, so all of the royal characters are wearing clothing which points upward. During the Renaissance time, the church was the most important determining factor for everything. The Duke is probably more frustrated with his king during this time than he would be in any other time period, because the king is sinning by being slothful instead of doing his kingly duties. The next person who draws the eye is the king himself. He is naked. Nakedness represents his vulnerability and openness to his people. He is revealing who he really is, his shortcomings and difficulties dealing with being king. He has opened himself up to show the truth about himself. Finally, the reader notices the page. The page is wearing typical common clothes. His clothing is a dimly colored green. Green usually represents nature and life. The page himself is a representative of the common man. He is lively throughout the story, doing lots of hard work. The image is dim, representing the bleak situation they found themselves in. Steam coats the top of the page, making it difficult to see, just as it is hard for his people to see and understand why the king has holed up in his tub. This image is the epitome of the story, depicting the king fishing, as he is fishing his men into the tub with him, and the Duke looking frustrated, but indulging him, fully dressed, so not wholeheartedly, but in an effort to convince him otherwise.
Considering the words of the book, we notice the author is using words that fit with the time period of the book, such as court and page. Also, when the page cries, "Oh, who knows what to do?" the O part sounds desperate, and as the book goes along, we the readers can interpret it as the page becoming more and more desperate every time. Also, the time of day is being added into the text. For example, when the sun came up and when the night got dark, showing that it takes a whole day to finally get the king out of the bathtub. A literary technique the author uses to tell the story is her use of space. The text is very little at the top corners of the book, leaving a lot of storytelling to the illustrations. The literary elements the author draws on to tell his story consist of time, as mentioned before, conflict, presented as no one can get the king out of the tub until the page does. No one of higher power or wealth can get him out, but the page who is not wealthy, not powerful, is able to get him out of the tub, symbolizing that power and money does not mean you have the solution to everything or that you're the smartest. Also, point of view, when we as the readers, our point of view of being in the room where everyone else is makes us feel like maybe we can think of a way to get the king out of the bathtub. Then, if we read this book to our kids, students, we can ask them what their ideas are. This causes a better relationship that we readers can have with the book and feel more connected. The words add to the story by having the text be repetitive, just like the sequence of illustrations. However, the text says as little as possible, leaving all the talking to the illustrations. We also notice the king repeats his final words 3 times in multiple occasions throughout the book, showing happiness and fun. Come in, cried the king with a jig, jig, jig. The number 3 symbolizes completion, meaning that the king's mind is being made and that the completion of the conversation has occurred. This is also interesting because the last 3 words of the book are glug, 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 as the water is going down the drain, meaning that maybe the king's happiness and fun is going down the drain as well.
The illustrations are extremely important in Audrey Wood's books. The illustrations in King Bidgood's in the Bathtub support the text and give it meaning that you would have otherwise not gathered from the text alone. For example, if the illustrations were never provided, the reader would not understand the page's personality or struggles that he goes through throughout the book. This is an example of the synergistic relationship between written text and visual images in the children's literature that give a greater meaning to the story together than by themselves. Audrey's lack of detail in the text leaves gaps of information for the reader to explore themselves. The setting is repeated throughout the book. The scene changes from the castle hallway to the bathroom. However, each scene has altered details. The color scheme used in Don Wood's illustrations correlate with the current mood and time in the story. For example, when the Duke is walking out of the bathroom defeated, not succeeding in getting the king out of the bathtub, the colors used are dark and dreary. And when the page finally pulls the plug on the bathtub, the colors used are brighter and happy. As the story moves forward, the backlight becomes darker, showing time passing, as the king wastes time in the bathtub. The last illustration in the book leaves the story open-ended, making the reader question what the king will do next, and if he will return to the bathtub in the future.
Within the information collected about the author and illustrator, we conclude they have a son and are married, which helps us create the image that the character known as the page was created and drawn based off their son. Also, through the tight bond of the author and illustrator's marriage, we can conclude that through their writings they are a team and have created stories that they may have experienced throughout their daily lives. This also helps us understand that because of the fun atmospheres of Audrey being around a circus at one point in her life, that she portrays a fun attitude through the goofy story of the king who is of higher power not getting out of the bathtub. The overall message that the author and illustrator tried to portray was the fact that kids and adults don't always act as they should, represented by the king in the bathtub and the young page boy that switched everyday roles in the story. You can still have an imagination when you're older, and children can be a lot smarter and responsible than adults give them credit. We can also establish that the page represents the common man at that time period. Our own experiences through culture and everyday life can be related to being overlooked at the workplace at a young age, also relating to being off task to avoid duties, and how that portrays to digging yourself a bigger hole, correlating to the bathtub and all the times the king won't get out of the tub.
After doing the picture book analysis, we began to understand the underlying message that Audrey and Don Wood wanted us to gather. We believe that a person isn't defined by their wealth or power, but it's how they use their brain and heart. For example, as we mentioned before, the page just used his brain to pull the plug, when the other powerful and wealthy characters, such as the queen, the knight, the duke, and the court, tried to coax the king out of the tub. We believe that everyone has some sort of knowledge or helpful guidance that others can learn from in their life, regardless of race, color, age, gender, and class. For example, the page who was the youngest, smallest, weakest, least powerful, and wealthy was the one who managed to get the king out of the tub after 4 others have tried. Everyone has a strength to contribute, and everyone has something to learn.